I'm Luis Calingo. I'm the University President at Holy Angel University in Angeles City. I have been the principal consultant for the Philippine Quality Award since its beginning. It all started in around December of 1995. I was then a technical expert of the Asian Productivity Organization to DAP, the Development Academy of the Philippines. But my primary purpose at that time was to infuse productivity and quality into academia in higher education. So at that time, I introduced to DAP the idea of having a Philippine National Quality Award program that is patterned after the U.S. Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. So the DAP considered that idea further, and so in June of 1996, I've had meetings at DAP. DAP had a pilot training of quality award assessors following the PQA, what was then the Baldrige criteria. And there was a parallel activity that was going on with the Philippine Society for Quality. Bear in mind that DAP's intent was to create a National Quality Award program for government agencies as part of its public sector productivity initiative. But there was a parallel effort on the part of the private sector. Specifically, the Philippine Society for Quality was looking at upgrading its historical, the Outstanding Quality Company of the Year award into a National Quality Award that is patterned after the Baldrige Award. And both of them, DAP and PSQ, separately asked for my assistance. And so I told them that maybe the most efficient way of doing this and to helping you is to just have a single National Quality Award program for the Philippines. And then a few months later, the Philippine President Fidel Ramos at that time launched the National Action Agenda for Productivity. And one of the initiatives that we were proposing is to have the PQA, the Philippine Quality Award, as one of its signature programs. But it did not come easy. DAP, PSQ, and I had several meetings at DTI with Undersecretary Melito Salazar at that time to convince him of the viability and the desirability of a National Quality Award program. And then together, once we got his buy-in, we got DTI Secretary Cesar Bautista to agree, to approve it. And it finally made its way into an Executive Order number 448 signed by President Ramos in 1997. And what happened after that is that we trained the first batch of PQA assessors at DAP Tagaytay in January 1997. And thus the PQA was born. There was initial excitement on the part of, I have to admit, the excitement was more on the part of the private sector because there had already been a National Quality Award program in place. And then the other issue that we had to settle at that time is that DAP is not really in the business of managing programs per se. DAP historically has been more like a think tank. It will conceptualize programs and then someone else, another agency would implement it. And so we came up with the concept of there has to be an award manager and there has to be award administrators acting on behalf of the award manager. And that is when the role of the Department of Trade and Industry came in as the award manager of the program, and that was part of the executive order. And then DAP and PSQ became the award managers for the public and the private sectors respectively. So there was, we had to sell the idea to both PSQ as well as an award administrator, and of course DAP also as an award administrator for the public sector. And of course DTI is also, because this is new work for DTI that they will have to do. And at that time, the Council of Labor Relations of DTI was the one who actually picked up the PQA program, and that is now the Competitiveness Bureau of DTI. We adopted the criteria in its totality, even to this day. So the 7 categories of examination in the Baldrige are also found in the PQA. But what is different about the Philippines is because of the recognition that it might take the Philippines many years before we could come up with a world-class organization that is almost equivalent to a Baldrige Award recipient. So we created levels of recognition. in the PQA, which does not happen, which does not exist in the Baldrige Award. Also, another variation of the PQA is that at the time when the PQA was started, the Baldrige was only for the private sector. But we also had a PQA, the PQA covered the public sector as well. So national government agencies, GOCCs, and LGUs can apply for the PQA, whereas at that time, only private sector organizations can apply for the Baldrige Award. So those were the two major changes: the eligibility categories for organizations, as well as the levels of recognition. For the first time this year, there have actually been more applicants coming from the public sector than the private sector. So there were 14 applicants in the past award cycle in 2015. 10 of those came from the public sector. That is a major accomplishment. Whereas, as I've said earlier, much of the proponent for the PQA actually came from the private sector. Now the tide has turned. And the other important accomplishment, I would say, is that in 1997, in terms of the World Competitiveness Index, the Philippines actually was on the 36th percentile in 1997, and now we are at the 64th percentile just last year. And I would attribute that in no small part to the accomplishments of the PQA in enhancing national competitiveness. I think, number one, it's important for organizations to be competitive and innovative in order to survive, in order to thrive and be a going concern. And so having a performance management mechanism is going to be an important attribute for any sustainable organization. And the second important thing is that 2020 hindsight is easier to have than 2020 foresight. And that's, leaders need to be able to have the 2020 foresight. It's easy to have 2020 hindsight because it's easy for any leader to assess his or her strengths and weaknesses. It's easy for an organization to assess their historical performance and how good it was. But it's not easy for them to actually address the future, to come up with strategies and systems and processes that would actually lead them toward long-lasting success. And if you take a look at the PQA program, the recipients of the Philippine Quality Award are role models of competitiveness and innovativeness. And so they actually show other organizations a way by which how can we have strategies, systems, and results that would point towards competitiveness and innovativeness and long-lasting success. And so I believe that's the greatest contribution that the PQA framework can make to any organization. Well, I would start by saying that all businesses have one objective, and that is to create value for its customers. And in terms of the public sector, it's the stakeholders as well. So creating that value for customers and stakeholders. And so it's incumbent on any senior leader of the organization, whatever type of organization that you are in, to actually identify what are those things that would enable you to maximize your value to your customers and stakeholders. And here is a framework that would enable you to create satisfied and productive workforce. With a satisfied and productive workforce, you can have productive, or rather satisfied employees as well, because a satisfied and productive workforce would execute excellent processes. And out of those excellent processes, then you benefit ultimately your customer. And because you benefit your customer, then you ensure the ongoing nature of your business, and that would show in your financial results. All of these are captured in the PQA framework. And so this is a very cost-effective way of achieving that world-class performance that everyone aspires for. I know that there are other alternative ways, alternative routes of going through this. You can try ISO, you can try all of these other frameworks, but the PQA is the most cost-effective way because it's only for the price of the application itself. And in return, you get a feedback report that represents the work of volunteer assessors who are doing this for love of country, which is about the equivalent of 1,000 man-hours of work that is behind that feedback report that you get. And so if you're looking for value for money, for the small application fee that you get this feedback report that you would ordinarily pay substantial amounts of pesos to a consultant to actually do this, but you're getting it for the price of that application fee. There's so many things. There's no one factor that would contribute to that. There's, of course, the advocacy of the award administrator for the public sector, which is the Development Academy of the Philippines. Just like the PSQ, Philippine Society for Quality, is the one that advocates participation in the private sector. So that is one, the advocacy efforts. Okay. Secondly, of course, there is the results-based performance management system in the Philippine government contributes to that as well, and because the PQA actually helps you in actually going through that operational performance indicator framework. So it's a useful tool that an agency can actually use. And so just on those two things alone, you would expect to have a wider participation, a broader participation in the public sector.